Hi, my name is Pamela Fuselli, and I'm the host of Popping the Bubble Wrap. Are you the person in your family who worries about the safety of others, about buying safety products and using them? Are you yelling, "Yes, that's me"? Then this is the podcast for you. Raising a child or children can be a hair-raising undertaking, and keeping them safe is your priority. Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast explores what you really need to think about and provides easy tips on prevention strategies. No bubble wrap here, though. I'm guessing that if I asked you to count on one hand the number of times you've had to intercept your child as they were about to put something icky into their mouths, you couldn't do it. Young kids are so curious, and they explore the world around them by taste. Today, we're going to talk about the things that kids put in their mouths that are more than just icky, the things that could actually harm them. What are those things, and how can we reduce the chances of our children coming across them? Joining me today are parents Stephanie Krenishin and Jane Moorish, as well as our expert Stephanie Cowell, Director of Knowledge Translation at Parachute. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So Jane and Steph K, since we have two Stephanies on the line today, each of you have toddler-aged kids. How often do you find yourself running across that room, either to stop them from putting something icky into their mouths or to get something out of their mouth that they've already managed to get in there? Jane, maybe I'll start with you. Do you have some stories to share?
Oh, I have stories. I would say it happens like weekly basis. The best story I have is I think all parents know the like dreaded silence. When the toddler is suddenly quiet, that is when something is happening. And I remember distinctly one weekend, Graham, my husband, and I noticed Lincoln was being quiet. We heard a little bit of giggling and we were like, that is not good. And we went upstairs and unbeknownst to us, Lincoln had learned how to unlock the like safety thing on our bathroom cabinet. And we found him with Windex and multiple cups, like his bath cups, his bath toys, making potions because they had started making potions at daycare in the water table. And he found blue water and said, well, now I'm going to make some potions. And it's just this like very clear flashbulb memory of that, or finding him with like button batteries because they're in, especially around the holiday time, all my little decorations have button batteries. So it's constant. It is always on my mind. So I'm really excited to learn more about it today.
Well, he is very creative making potions at such a young age. Yep. Steph K, what about you? What's been your experience?
For me, I think when she was, because my daughter's 3 now, so when she was like between 1 and 2, that's when I found that she was getting into things way, way more. Like especially, I have a lot of plants, and she would always get into the dirt of my plants and things like that. She'd put small toys in her mouth, just stuff like that. But now that she's like older, she's 3, but she's like more in, she doesn't put random stuff in her mouth. She puts like my makeup. She wants to play with my makeup and perfume and like stuff like that, which I find is challenging because I have so much stuff like that.
Yeah, that's some of the products that, you know, contribute to some of the poisoning that you might not think about. What are some of the products in your home that you've touched a little bit on it, that you find most challenging to keep away from your kids? You know, maybe they're, you know, colorful, or, you know, for some reason they have a real fascination with a particular product. Jane, you mentioned Windex.
Yeah, I think the most challenging is the stuff that we use every day, right? And so like I have Lysol wipes out on like multiple counters in bathrooms, and I know that's something that he shouldn't be putting in his mouth, but like there they are, and he wants to touch them and clean with them and to wipe up his own stuff. Those are really challenging ones. When Steph K mentioned things like makeup, I've got that all out because I use it every day. There it is. Those are my big ones. The stuff that it is there, it is in hand's reach because we use it so often. Things like medicine and stuff we can keep high and away. But now we also find that he knows how to move bar stools around the house and is a very tall child. So those are our big ones. Am I just gonna have to build like 12-foot ceilings and put things in? I don't know at this point. We're not sure.
You touch on something. I mean, they can all of a sudden do something one day that they didn't do the day before, finding that bar stool and figuring out that they can climb on top of it, and as something that maybe, you didn't think about last week, but this week you got to think about. Steph K, what are some of the products that you mentioned, getting into plants and dirt and your makeup and things like that, but Jane was talking about things you use every day. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of like just bathroom stuff for me, like soaps and things that probably shouldn't be toxic, but I don't really know. But she loves playing with soaps and making potions as well. That's another thing she loves. And she likes using things from the kitchen, like cooking ingredients. Like she likes getting into flour, and that's like a huge thing for her. So stuff like that I would never think of. It kind of is funny because I think when I was a kid, I did the kind of same things. I love playing with flour and stuff too, but stuff you don't think about.
Well, they like to explore and they like to do what you're doing. So you both mentioned makeup, they see you using those products every day, or flour, cooking, then they want to be involved. They want to be doing the same thing that mom or dad or their, big sister is doing. So You can see how they integrate that into what their play is. Stephanie, can you talk to us a little bit? We've heard from Jane and Steph K about some of the things that they're worried about in terms of their kids getting into. What are some of the most common causes of poisoning for kids and other things that they swallow that are, dangerous to them?
Yeah, so at Parachute, we work with the poison centers across Canada, and they collect data on the reasons that people call them and what kind of issues are at hand, which is really interesting data that we can look at to understand what children or people of all ages are being exposed to. And I don't think, based on the conversation so far, these will come as a huge surprise. So the number one reason that calls are made to poison centers for children, the first one is medications. And the most common type of medication that calls are received for are painkillers. So acetaminophen, ibuprofen, really common over-the-counter medications that we have in our homes. Following medications would be household cleaning products. Again, not a surprise based on the conversation. They are colorful, they are around, and particularly since the pandemic, we saw increases of these because we were doing so much cleaning in our homes. And then the third item would be cosmetics and personal care products. So mouthwash, lipstick, perfumes, nail polish removers. Again, those daily products that are in and around our homes that we may not, think twice about. There's so much to think about as a parent. So that's probably the reason why these are the products that kids are getting exposed to the most. And aside from that, there's always emerging areas we have to think about as our worlds are changing. So the introduction of cannabis products and cannabis edibles in a lot of homes, that's something we've seen increasing in terms of children being exposed and actually going to hospital. And the issue of button batteries was mentioned. Button batteries are in everything, like you said, Jane, and they're actually really, really dangerous and cause harm really quickly. It's not necessarily a poisoning, but does affect internal organs and can cause some really scary damage in kids.
Thanks, Stephanie. So Jane and Steph K, do any of those surprise you? I mean, you did touch on a lot of them, but were any of those of surprise or anything that was missing off that list?
I never thought about mouthwash. Right away, I was like, that is out. We have it. Link is 4, so he's had his first dentist visit. We're talking about how important it is to keep your teeth clean. We're talking about sugar bugs. That's the current kind of thing that's going on. Talk about sugar bugs. You got to brush and use your mouthwash. So it's a really positive thing we want him to do. I had never thought about the fact of the danger, especially because his toothpaste tastes really good. Like, why doesn't my toothpaste taste like that? So he likes it and I never thought about that. Wow. that is a big one. That is going to get moved when we're done recording today.
And it's a good one to think about, Jane. The main concern with mouthwash really is the alcohol content. So there are alcohol-free versions available, which may also be an option that adds that extra level of security.
Yeah, Steph K, anything that surprised you?
I agree with the mouthwash being surprising because it seems like such a good thing, not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like nail polish remover is like, okay, obviously that's bad if they get that, but mouthwash was surprising for me too. And lipstick, because my daughter loves lipstick. So I don't know what's toxic about that, but maybe if they eat it, probably.
Yeah, and Steph K, again, you're nailing it. Exactly what you said. What we say about poison is it's not necessarily the item, it's the dose. So, we need medication to take care of things, and that's not a bad thing. But when there's too much, and same with so many products, they're not inherently bad, but a certain amount. And for children's little bodies, the effects they can have, that's when there's concern. So it's thinking about it in that light.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Stephanie. This has been fascinating. We are going to take a quick break and we'll be back in just a second. Thanks to Amazon Canada, our supporter for season 2 of Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast. Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were talking about some of the products that surprised you as potentially poisonous. And Stephanie, I think you made a really good point about, the product may not in and of itself be poisonous. Like, Steph K and Jane talked about being surprised about mouthwash, which is actually meant to be used, and especially, as a product that's good for your teeth and your oral health, but in quantities, swallowed are dangerous. So what advice would you give to parents in general when it comes to keeping your kids safe from poisons in their homes?
Yeah. So one thing you can do is, as much as possible, keeping products in the original containers that you buy them in, especially for products that come in child-resistant packaging, like medications. That's important. But for all products, what we'll see sometimes is people might move, for example, cleaners into a different package. Oh, I prefer this spray bottle, or I'd like a smaller jug, which is totally understandable for your realistic day-to-day life. But what happens then is we see products getting mixed up or not knowing what's in a container. And not only can that be dangerous for mixing up access to products, if you then have to unfortunately call a poison center or visit a hospital, you have no information on what was in that container to actually tell the healthcare professionals so that they can help out. So keeping things in their original container. The next thing is thinking about layers of protection. Jane, you mentioned having a product behind a cabinet lock. That's awesome. So we want to keep things in their original container, child resistant if possible. And then we want to lock them high and away if possible. So behind a lock, but also, okay, can we put it out of sight so they're not tempted to try and get it? Can we put it beyond where they can reach, knowing that even young ones that can't walk can already begin to climb? And because none of these are completely foolproof. But what we want to do is create those layers. So really what it does is buy time for you to notice, oh, wait, the little ones are being a little too quiet. I'm going to run in there and intervene. So it buys that time to intervene, which is really important.
That's really good advice. And Jane, I think your example with the, Link getting up on the bar stool and that and being too quiet, you're like always suspicious. We have Stephanie here to answer any questions. Are there questions that you have that you'd like to know about, poison products, or if something's poisonous, or how to take steps? And even do you know how you call the poison center if you do have an incident that you need some help with? Jane, maybe I'll start with you.
I have a question. I would like to know the best evidence informed practice around talking with your kids about this. I remember we were talking with Lincoln, you don't touch medicine, it can hurt you. But then he was like, well, when he had a fever, he didn't want to take his Advil anymore because it was dangerous. Well, no, these are chemicals that they're bad. But then he was like, well, then why are you cleaning with them? Which is a whole nother question. But like fear appeals, I know there's there's research that shows those aren't great. You don't want to scare your child out of not wanting to touch things. Is there anything kind of like a middle ground around talking with your kids about this that shows them these are dangerous, but have a place as well?
Yeah, that's such an important consideration. And language is so important. You're teaching your little ones so many things. Pam, I'll start. And I don't know if you have any additional thoughts, but one of the things we think about is kind of the flip side of that is how we don't want to talk about certain products. So, for example, when it comes to medications and vitamins are another top poisoning exposure for kids. What we don't want to do is describe them as candy or treats, or sometimes we use language because we want kids to take the vitamin, take the pill. So, oh, it's just like candy. So one of the things we emphasize with parents is to avoid that type of framing where you're trying to entice kids by comparing it to candy and treats, because what we don't want to do is then have kids on the hunt for those treats. And again, coming to the fact that we have other types of products in our homes, like forms of edible cannabis that really, really can come in the form of treats. We do need to watch our language in the way that we talk about that and the strategies that we use. Pam, do you have more to add on that?
I think, Jane, I wish I had a great one solution for you. I think the first thing you have to do is know your child and, how inquisitive are they? How much are they watching you? And they're watching you a lot. So what do you take in front of them versus not? And so I think tailoring it to what they can understand as well. Like sometimes you take this, but you only take this at certain times, and to, ask it before you eat anything, and we've heard that mentioned when you think about allergies and kids with food allergies, about asking an adult before you take anything just in case. So I think those are some suggestions. But knowing your child and what they can understand and what kind of language, the comparison I think is a good thing to stay away from, but there may be other kind of scenarios or stories that you talk about with your kids that you can integrate that kind of thing into. Steph K, do you have any questions before we wrap up?
I was just going to ask if there is a specific line to call for poisoning, or if you just take your kid to the emergency, because I would just take my kid to the emergency. I don't know if there's another option.
Yeah, that's really important knowledge for parents and actually everyone in Canada to have. So in Canada, we have 5 regional poison centers. But the good news is that we now have a toll-free number in Canada where you can call from pretty much anywhere in the country, and you will be connected to the poison center appropriate to where you're located, which is great because that also means that if you're visiting family in another province or territory, it's the same number and you don't have to worry about that. So the toll-free number is 1-844-POISON-X, 1-844-764-7669. And that will connect you with the best available poison center based on where you located. Now, if there's a case where, your child is lost consciousness, is having trouble breathing, some of these basic first aid concerns, then absolutely call 911 or take them to the hospital. But in most cases, the poison center can be your first stop, and they will say, don't Google, call us right away. Because in about 60% of the time when folks call poison centers, the poison center can help you just by being on the phone, and you can stay home and manage the situation, which is great because it's so challenging to go to the hospital, to wait for hours in an emergency room. They have expert training and can really help and support you. So we really encourage folks, if it's not an absolute emergency, give the poison center a call.
Stephanie, Jane, Steph K, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to come on the podcast and talk to us about your experiences with your kids, about things that might be poisonous, about poison prevention. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. On the next episode of Popping the Bubble Wrap, we will be talking about sleep environments for your kids. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Popping the Bubble Wrap is a podcast of Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention charity. We release episodes monthly. Visit us at parachute.ca and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parachute Canada. Don't keep us a secret, though. Help other parents find this podcast by sharing the link to Popping the Bubble Wrap and taking a second to submit a review. It really does help. Popping the Bubble Wrap is produced by Story Studio Network.